June 9th. It is the second Friday meeting of the OHDSI Phenotype Development Evaluation Workgroup. We have about 5 people today on the call, and hopefully more will join. So I have here in front of you the OKR for this workgroup for 2023. We previously rated ourselves. We're doing well in most areas, especially bringing on new people to the community, especially those with clinically trained backgrounds, collaborative developing phenotypes. There are certain topics that we want to focus on in the next few months. The main theme of this next few months is to get some papers, scientific papers. Last year we received feedback that the work group can focus its energy on writing scientific papers, and so that's the main theme that we are focusing energy on. This is the proposed agenda for today. Juan has a topic on probabilistic phenotyping. This is an ongoing topic that has been discussed over many work groups. He did a fantastic presentation on Aphrodite in prior meetings, and also there was some interest in the work group to work together on a subgroup on probabilistic phenotyping. So, Juan, do you have any updates to the work group on this particular topic?
Yeah, so I mean, so we'll set up a regular time to call, so I'll reach out to people, but I'm waiting to do it at the same time to have the February 2022 paper, more ironed out so everybody else can put in their contribution on it. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have that phenotyping with LLMs kind of qualitative evaluation paper going as well for trying to target the OHDSI Symposium for kind of preliminary submission. I still need to reach out back to Christian to send him the evaluation worksheet, but those are kind of the updates from my side.
Right. Is there anything that you need from the work group to meet the objectives?
No, I think I'm in touch with whoever I need to be in touch now that wants to participate. So I'll be sending out the draft of the actual text without any of the experiments yet, probably by Wednesday. So we get some time to review it and just drop in the qualitative evaluation. Thank you.
And Juan, the question is not about that. I understand what you're doing here. The PheValuator or PheValuator called on this slide. So the elephant on the room is that there are 2 probabilistic methods that we have, and they don't look very much compatible with each other. Okay, one is just for calculating the the performance of the non-probabilistic one, the deterministic ones, but the probabilistic one actually can't be used itself for other purposes. And then there's Aphrodite, which is yours, and no, is it Aphrodite? No, how do you call yours? Do you call it Aphrodite?
Yes, Aphrodite. Yeah.
And that I can actually make cohorts, but then it sounds like it's similar to the other one, but is it? And so on and so on. And I know that other wants to apparently fix the terminology. But is there any plan to actually consolidate this so that I can, have one way of creating probabilistic phenotypes and use it either as a phenotype or use it just to measure another phenotype rather than have 2?
Yeah, no, that is an excellent suggestion, and definitely, I need to just sit down with Joel and iron that out. But ideally, yeah, we want to combine tools rather than have all this disparate single-use tools like you mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So, Christian, did you frame PheValuator as a tool to create cohorts?
No.
Okay.
In fact, the cohorts that it creates, it does create a cohort, but it throws them away. It uses it only for one purpose, which is measure another cohort, a deterministic one, right? So it does all the job, it does a full Aphrodite, and then that cohort, that probabilistic one, goes into the trash. That's sad.
I think an interesting, so my understanding was a little different from yours. So maybe a good topic would be a joint presentation or a discussion or a debate between Joel and Juan in the work group and half an hour discussion. What do you think, Juan?
Yeah, no, that would be definitely good. I mean, I'll try to rehearse it with Joel first, but yeah.
Awesome. All right, so we'll
Are you taking bets? You need to take bets, Juan, that we can actually. Now, look, the thing is, I don't know what you would talk about, right? I mean, you guys are pretty much, similar. So yeah, I'm sure you have different. The nuances are different and different parameters and that kind of thing. But in principle, it's the same thing. So, the question really is that you guys have to tell us is, look, here are the similarities, here are the differences. We believe that the similarities, these differences are irrelevant. These differences could be ironed out if somebody has time or if we have time. So essentially, because for us, these are black boxes, right? I'm sure we could read up on exactly what you're doing, but nobody's going to do that. So you're going to have to say, look, we have two twins here, and this is what we think, how similar they are to each other, and this is the situation.
Well, I think they're more like adoptive siblings, not really twins. But yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, we should consolidate, or at least point out clearly, what is what for and what is what not for.
No, even theoretically, the question will come, can we have one, and we just do, we put a parameter in, whether we want to use it as minus P is PheValuator, minus A is Aphrodite, and otherwise it's the same thing, and it's going to spit out whatever it needs to spit out. That question will come, and you will have to explain, apart from having no time, why you would not do it if you think it's not a good idea.
Yeah, no. You're totally right. And with the excuse that I have no time, I haven't done
Exactly.
that, but I do need to sit down and align with Joel.
We understand that. That one we understand. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, Juan, for the update. So I'm going to go to the next topic. So the set of topics are publications. There are, I think, the 8 items here that we're tracking. The most important topic for today is the final one. So I'm going to breeze through the first few and see if there's any update. The first one is the paper on community experience from Phenotype February. There is an abstract out that's on the teams that was sent for EMEA, and I think we've not heard from there, or it's still the same. So I'm just that's the only update. If anybody wants to help convert that abstract into a full-fledged paper, it's an opportunity for collaboration. Now, there is a tracker for all the phenotypes that we worked collaboratively on a Phenotype February. Some individuals who are leads on this have provided their updates. That is on that spreadsheet that is that we're calling as the tracker. I don't. So here is the tracker with some of the updates. That's also on the Microsoft Teams channel of this work group. There's a work that Asa and I are working on. We still have to make progress on it, which is we phenotyped what is called as designated medical events. Designated medical events are clinical events that the European Medical Agency has considered important from a drug safety pharmacovigilance perspective. It's publicly available, and on their website, it has entities like acute pancreatitis, hepatic failure, and so on. So we would like to write our experience on phenotyping these, and that's something that's on the agenda. There is a paper that is currently being circulated among journals. This is the paper about the Cohort diagnostics tool, and that's currently under review in a journal, I believe. There is an idea for a paper on phenotype development with evaluation in mind. So that based the general it's in the conceptual stage. It has not been drafted. That paper basically says that is trying to say that every time you make a rule, say in a rule-based phenotype, you need to understand what happens from an evaluation perspective. What happens to the sensitivity and specificity, PPV and NPV, for example. And you have to show that every rule makes an impact. And that paper will attempt to articulate that idea. Again, in a very early conceptual stage, so open for collaboration on that one. Evan has an idea. Evan, feel free to chime in. This is based on your experience with building phenotypes for the SOS challenge. And go ahead if you have anything to share.
I mean, it's not a groundbreaking idea. It was just more given the amount of work that went into the development and evaluation of the. This was in particular, I was working on the aortic diseases, so aortic aneurysm, aortic dissection, the aortic aneurysm rupture, as that were used as a composite outcome in the fluoroquinolone study. That would merit pushing it forward as its own phenotype paper, and this is really just more of an instance of a whole class of papers that I think we have the opportunity to write to build credo and trust in our phenotyping process. They also contribute, or can contribute a little bit with respect to a characterization of these entities in real-world data, which is I think of interest to clinical audiences. So right now that's about halfway done. I'm working on it as a OHDSI Symposium submission. So hopefully, actually by the end of the day or Monday or Tuesday, it'll be in a state where I can circulate it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Evan. Any questions for Evan? And then the other thing that I know Aza wants to work on is the terminology and definitions. Basically, we have had, as a community, we have struggled to have a consensus on words, common language. We continue to debate what is the difference between a phenotype and a cohort, for example. So we need to align as a community on terminologies, and this is one of the OKRs of this work group. So that's an action item that still needs to be worked on, and we have not made progress on it. Before I go to the final agenda item, is there any other publications or related work that you would like this work group to track? All right. So I'm going to jump to the main agenda item. So recently I was working on a research effort, which is to quantify capture of symptoms among persons with an acute disease. And I wanted to do that to demonstrate an application of the OHDSI Phenotype Library. The OHDSI Phenotype Library has about 300 cohort definitions. About 90 of them are symptom cohorts, and then there's about 50 acute disease cohort definitions. So the idea of that body of work was for these acute disease phenotypes are things like acute myocardial infarction, disseminated intravascular coagulation, and so on. What is the co-occurrence on index date, that is the cohort start date, symptoms that are expected for this disease, such as chest pain, nausea, vomiting, bleeding, and so on. And to implement this study, I used the cohort definitions in the OHDSI Phenotype Library, along with a stack of OHDSI tools. And the results were good, but the point here is when I was writing up the paper, I realized that there is no reference for the OHDSI Phenotype Library. So we need a reference to say what is an OHDSI Phenotype Library, because only then can you say we use the core definitions in the OHDSI Phenotype Library. So I spent some time thinking about how to write a paper on the OHDSI Phenotype Library. I have an initial draft out and thought maybe this is an opportunity to invite the community as part of this work group for collaboration. So I posted this earlier today. Wanted to spend some time with you all just talking about it and then getting feedback on what is the best ways to take it to completion. So that's, so if you click on this forum post and go to the link there, you will find the paper. You will need to have access to the Odyssey tenant to be able to access it. I'll just show you quickly where it is, if I can.
The Odyssey tenant?
The Odyssey Teams channel.
Oh.
And oh, I think I have to go to a different computer to show you, I guess. All right, so if you go, so this is the Odyssey Teams channel, and if you go to the Phenotype Development Evaluation Workgroup, in general, under Files, there is a folder called Phenotype Library, and if you click on it, is a paper called the Odyssey Phenotype Library, and that's what we are talking about right now. So that's how you can access it. You can also access it by clicking on this link, and you should be able to open that document. That's how I have accessed it. So
Can you drop that link into chat?
absolutely.
Thanks.
And this is also a good opportunity for you to confirm that you can access it. All right, so Christian and I were talking about this particular document yesterday, and one way of framing this paper is this is not a scientific experiment. So this is a conveyance of information. So it's a brief communication. So it doesn't conform to what you would expect in an experiment of a method section and a result section and so on. This is a segment that says this is what it is. So it matches the journal articles accepting something called a brief communication. So I have about 2,000 words here. Now I'll quickly go over the structure. So I have an introduction section. The introduction section is very Odyssey centric. It uses terminologies that are around that our Odyssey community is familiar with, but maybe something that is not new or unknown, unfamiliar to the rest of the informative community. There is the concept of the core definition that this one kind of describes. So the segments here are core definition, metadata, collaborative curation, peer review, lifecycle, technical infrastructure, quality checks, and then a conclusion. We can organize content or add new content. This is an early stage draft right now. This is meant for community collaboration. So I'll go through this. The first point I was thinking of making is that this is attempting to conform with the FAIR principles. And this FAIR principles is I think a good idea for us to conform with. I am not an expert on the FAIR principles, so if anybody in the community has experience or expertise with the FAIR principles, it would be very informative and helpful so that we can make the Odyssey Phenotype Library conforming to the FAIR principles. The FAIR principles have certain ideas that the body of work should be referenceable. It has to have proper attribution. It has to have proper metadata, and it has to allow for reuse. And I think that's what the acronym FAIR stands for. So the Odyssey Phenotype Library is able to achieve those. It does have it does do a good job in attribution. It does allow for referencing. It allows for reusing, and so on. The second point I'm making in the introduction is what is the unit of the library? The unit of the library, that is each entry into the library, is a cohort definition. And cohort definition is still an Odyssey construct. And I'm going to explain what cohort definition is in the next section. But the point here is we have a cohort definition and everything hangs off the cohort definition. And that cohort definition is identified by an externally referenceable stable ID. We will attach metadata to that cohort definition, and the library will catalog those metadata around the cohort definition. Did somebody have a comment? Greg, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, apologies. I by accident unmuted myself and disturbed you. I'm sorry about that.
That's fine, absolutely. But welcome. I forgot to welcome you. Welcome to the meeting. There is the idea of version control. So there is a release cycle for the OHDSI Phenotype Library, and each release is associated with a version. And right now we are using the GitHub version cycle, but it's also kind of associated with the DOI, Digital Object Identifier. So that makes it more permanent. GitHub version numbers could be less permanent. There is a community engagement and a community participation process, and whoever is participating can be attributed. And the attribution is mostly done by names, but we can also do it with ORIC ID if there is one. The reason why ORIC ID is not being used right now mostly is because not many people have ORIC ID, and many people have several ORIC IDs, which makes it a mess. So that's why ORIC ID is not being used. But if ORIC ID is something that others could use, then the library could easily support it. Technically, it's not a challenge. We have a peer review process. You guys have seen the peer review process in the Phenotype February. And one of the key tenets of this library is we are only talking about OMOP CDM compatible computable cohort definitions. We're not talking about a human readable, logic flow diagram of how a cohort definition can be built. We're not informing somebody how to write an SQL query. We are actually giving them a computable cohort definition, which is I think novel. So that's the gist of the OHDSI Phenotype Library. And I think this segment introduces the principles and also the differentiating features of the library. So that's the introduction. Happy to take any feedback on introduction or make changes to it. The next segment is about cohort definition. And
I thought I'd just chime in because it just to comment about the introduction. I wouldn't undersell, especially to an audience that might not be familiar with it, the role that Atlas can play in terms of creating a human-interpretable version of the phenotype. I understand where you're going in that you're trying to make, it makes a distinction between PheKB, you know what I mean, and like those logical flow diagrams and what's being produced here. But I think what's being produced here is, like you mentioned here, a computable version, but also one that is human interpretable in a graphical user interface. Because people might not be aware of it. That's actually a major selling point.
Yeah, no, I wanted to hold that thought, and maybe you're right. Maybe a little bit of emphasis on introduction would help, but I'm introducing the construct here of a phenotype definition object model, which is essentially what you talked about. So the CERC compatible phenotype definition object model allows for the conversion between the machine understandable and a human understandable text. But the point also that the library constrains itself to OMOP CDM compatible executable queries. So in other words, if somebody writes a robust SQL statement, it's still acceptable into the library. If somebody writes an Aphrodite logic, that's acceptable to the library, which is.
Yeah, I think the good thing about the phenotype libraries and our phenotypes is that they are operational. You can immediately use them. And there's a whole the whole OHDSI Lego pieces, right? That fits together. You can shove it into the next. Well, of course, it doesn't work perfectly well. We know that, but at least it's set up that way. While phenotypes that usually people have, they're just talk, lists, usually concept sets or code lists.
So can I ask you a question? It's actually a very interesting topic to me. So let's say a phenotype versus a cohort. So what's like cohorts by Atlas, right? They result in very specific outputs: patient ID, entry date, exit date, right? The phenotypic definition. What's the output of that? Is it standardized across any definition? Because theoretically speaking, you're absolutely right. You can write a SQL statement as long as it outputs patient ID and enter the exit date. It's a cohort. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Because the output is always the same. In the phenotypic world, is it the same concept?
Yeah. So in the OHDSI Phenotype Library, the unit of representation is a computer executable logic that, when executed, creates a cohort, as in cohort ID, subject ID, cohort start date, cohort end date. It can be a SERSI compatible JSON that is generated from Atlas or Capper, or it could be an SQL statement, or
But
it could
the output
be
of that is what?
Hmm?
The output of the result of the execution would be what
a
exactly?
cohort table.
A cohort
So-
table. So phenotypic definition will still result in the same output as a cohort generation, right?
Correct. That's why this is a
Okay.
OHDSI code definition library.
Because I mean, theoretically, then you're absolutely right. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a cohort that's as designed by Atlas or it's a SQL statement, as long as it results in exactly the same contract, essentially output.
Correct.
What should be common in all of those things is what's getting generated, right? And it's
Correct.
probably somewhere you want to document it, essentially, which
Yes.
you already do, right? Mhm.
Yeah. So here, that's the next segment here, the code definition, and you perfect transition.
Okay.
So here, this paragraph, these two paragraphs attempts to answer that. So like here, what is the unit that is represented in the library? It's a cohort definition. What is a cohort definition? It could be rule based or probabilistic, but it is computable,
Right.
and to produce a cohort.
Okay, that makes
And
total sense then.
it has to be portable, which means that OHDSI software should be able to run it.
It actually, Gautam, there's probably opportunity to automate things a lot more, right? You should be just able to click on a deterministic or on a probabilistic phenotype, and if you click it, it just opens something, and then you can run it on your data, right? So we could make this a lot, or Greg in his tools, we can make this a lot more convenient than it is now. But
Yeah, absolutely.
we can. While the other guys, they can't. They can't just like write text, and that's the big difference.
Correct.
But I think what somebody said before is that what's nice about Atlas is the visual representation of the cohort, which you will be lacking.
Yeah. So if you write an SQL statement that outputs a cohort table, then you cannot create what Atlas can create, which is what is the entry event criteria, what is the concept set expression, what is the exit criteria, and so on. But if you create it in the JSON expression that is defined by the SERSI phenotype definition model, object model, then you can, because it has all the domain and the correlated queries and the concept set expressions, you can create the text version. So the value, if the library, I think, should come to take both SERSI compatible and not SERSI compatible, as long as it is executable and generates a cohort. And if it is SERSI compatible, it will create all of these computer generated stuff, because we know its conformance. If it's SQL, we don't know its conformance. If it's Aphrodite, still we don't know it.
And that is a good point. So yes. So short answer is yes. It isn't explicitly annotated, and it's dangerous if you bring this up, because I'm going to give you another rant about my annotation issue. But if I suppress that for a minute, yes, it's good, and the Aphrodite and the SQL is a black box. We could fix that, actually. And to have some kind of a module that, I don't know whether you can reverse engineer a SQL, probably not worth it. But the library could enforce that people annotate it when they are submitted, right? So when they submit it, they will have to create for each criterion. They have to define each criterion and annotate what the hell that thing does. and then trust this, that the SQL works. And Aphrodite, you could think about something that actually interprets what it does, right? So essentially, I don't know if it's a regression table, then it shows the, the beta coefficients of the main covariates that it picked, whatever. I don't know, right? So you could do that, and I think it's a good idea. It would actually increase the credibility substantially. Okay. Because people would say, oh, the Aphrodite, that's what it picked. That's interesting. Why would it pick that one? That's interesting. Well, probably because, every diabetic, I don't know, goes to a routine visit to the eye doctor, and that seems to be an extremely reliable criterion. For example, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that the probabilistic pick things that we don't necessarily expect, that is something that if that were explicit, would make a huge difference, because then people would stop thinking in their narrative way, right, of what they think a typical diabetic patient is, and instead they would realize, oh, that's not how the data work. The data show me something else, and that's an important piece people have to understand.
Yeah. So there is the one agreement that we all have is the output should be a cohort as defined as code definition ID, subject ID, code start date, code date. That's an agreement. So that's very clear. So whatever is submitted, we can have a testing framework where it's executed on a synthetic data to say, does it execute and generate a cohort? Right. So if it is Aphrodite query, or if it is a SQL query, we could have a quality check that the library can create, and I've written here some language on that, do regular quality checks to make sure that cohort is executed. It's not somebody's junk SQL.
So, Gautham, before you move forward, can I just flag something for you to think about? And you don't have to solve it right now, but I'm just saying. So in one place you say FAIR principles in universal identifier as a cohort identifier. In the second place you say cohort definition ID integer, which is by definition is not interoperable. It's going to clash, right? It's not unique. And that's actually perfectly explainable. One is used within the system itself, and the second one is used when you're sharing, right? So, but we need to distinguish those two things, right?
Yeah.
And it's something for us to discuss probably later when we dive into FAIR principles. They're pretty logical, but they're not always easy to implement especially when you're talking about identifiers, right? So we need to be careful there. But again, not just something for you to flag and just think about.
No, this is wonderful point, and you have actually brought in two. So let's talk about that, and that's an important conversation topic. The cohort ID that is currently in the OHDSI Phenotype Library is the ID assigned by an Atlas instance that I manage. Okay. So I basically, somebody creates a cohort that they want to submit. I put it into that Atlas. It gives an ID, and that gets pulled into an RBAC. That's it. I would like to put in DOI for every cohort ID. So I think that's possible. So then that will solve what you're saying, Greg, which is a DOI could be an externally referenceable digital object identifier for a cohort definition. So every row could have a DOI. And
but you don't want that, trust me. So no, because it's a waste of, it's complicating things. So again, I said it's my opinion again. Over years, I realized that there's a big difference between a unique identifier that has been shared globally, which is good to have, and unique identifiers within the system that you use internally, which is easy to reference and make it consistent with the rest of the unique identifiers within the system. So, and that's okay if you have a local Atlas ID, but what we need to think about is where at what point do you introduce and maintain a link to the global unique identifier, because if you start making all IDs across all of the systems unique identifiers, you're going to run out of space eventually, and be it's just a complexity that is not needed, right? So you only want to do unique identifiers for those objects that are shared globally, which is a cohort, but also probably separate internal IDs used by the system for the point of referential integrity, right? And constraints versus unique identifiers, but as a business element that is used to share things globally. Right? Make sense?
It's a good point. So he's right, Gowtham. We have to figure out what the namespace for that ID actually is,
Right.
and what you IDing. Are you IDing the concept? Are you IDing an actual instance?
Or both, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
If you're embedding a concept into your cohort versus you actually want to share a concept as an element that you believe could also be shared, which is all actually frequently is the case.
That's exactly right. And if I run the cohort and Greg runs the cohort, and then Greg runs the cohort on two of his databases, is it the same or is it different, right? So,
Let's see.
And then what
right
happens if I
now,
change it, right? And then what?
What I was thinking of is that every record in the phenotype library, and the record here is a cohort definition, would have an internal ID and an external ID. And the internal ID is just the Atlas ID. The external ID is a DOI. So if there is 500 unique cohort definitions in the library, there would be 500 DOIs.
Typically, again, fair principles, if you just start dancing from that, right? Like, where do you generate identifiers? It's some kind of a library that complies with fair principles, right? And fair principles is not just a UUID, but how you access and navigate this library through some kind of a interoperable API, right? So just be very careful before you do a full commitment to that. But it's not a bad idea. It's just not always. It's not difficult, but you have to remember all those things, right? So if you publish something, right, that's where you create a unique identifier. Unless you want to publish something, there's no need to even bother, right? In my opinion, again, some people, they go overboard. Everything was like, especially those folks who love linked data, right? That's where it's all coming from. But I would like recommend you stay with your domain problem and not get bogged down with as the technical kind of difficulties of how you're going to share that. So your main problem is like, can I create an effective phenotypic library? And then we can help to figure out at what point you introduce UUIDs and whatever into this.
Yeah, let's have a conversation on that.
Because that's what your strength is. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do it, but you can define a phenotypic definition of a thing, right? We'll divide and conquer.
Yeah, no, so let's have a conversation. I think you have an idea, Greg, that I would like to hear.
Yeah.
Maybe we can continue after, and maybe there's an initiative or something.
Exactly.
So that's basically the core definition. So that right now we talked about the core definitions could be the conformant with the Cersei's object model or not, as long as the output is a cohort, and that's the unit. Then comes the metadata. Now, metadata is for every cohort there has to be metadata. The metadata could be user submitted, so whoever has built the cohort can submit their metadata for it that they want the library to hold. There could be metadata that the librarian of the could assign, and these are like standard things like what is it? Is it accepted? Is it deprecated? Or some identifiers if we need to, and we'll talk about the identifiers later. And then this could be computer generated. So these are basically if it's a Cersei compatible cohort JSON, then we can do a lot more meta information on it. We can generate the human readable text, like Evan said. You can resolve the concepts and expressions and say, here's the code list that this core definition references. This is the entry criteria, this is the exit criteria, and so on. What domains does it touch on? Does it touch only the condition domain, or does it have observation domain, measurement domain, and so on? So those are all computer generated stuff. Could probably do it for Aphrodite and SQLs too, like Christian said, but right now there is no software that does it. We just have it for the C-based stuff. So these are the three types of metadata. The third one I talked about. The second one is very simple. It's basically, the librarian saying accepted or not accepted or so on. That's it. Very simple. The first one is open. This will include things like a short name, a long name, who is the contributor. So if Greg submits a core definition, then it has to be attributed to Greg, and that attribution could be just name equals to Greg Klebanov, or it could be Greg Klebanov's ORIC ID if he has one. Now, if Evan is the peer reviewer for it, then his ORIC ID could also be associated with it. We have meta information like clinical descriptions and logic descriptions, and Christian, you brought up recommended uses. Is it used for a target? Is it used as an outcome? Is it used as an indication, as a feature, whatever? What is the recommended uses? You can reference external links. So maybe an Odyssey forum post where people are just fighting it out, or some publication or some meta information like that. You can also talk about data source specific operational characteristics. So if you run the core definition on a data source, you could provide metrics like what core diagnostics would offer up. What is the cohort counts? What is the index event breakdown? What is characterization? Or what PheValuator would offer up, like sensitivity, positive predictive value, and so on, or maybe something else. So you can capture those meta information. There is a field called tags, so you can tag it like it was used in this study. And it's essentially hashtags. Any free text comments?
Can I again? I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but just like throw something into that.
Yeah.
Again, going back to FAIR principles, what they also talk about is the taxonomy that has been used to tag. Well, what is taxonomy? Taxonomy is essentially like vocabularies, right? That you use to create metadata. So when you say tag, it's a metadata, right? And there's a managed taxonomy, meaning we can agree on certain useful taxonomies as per OHDSI, how we're going to tag it. Like, so for example, maybe therapeutic area, like the pharma guy speaking, right? But you know what I mean. Or disease, or something that is defined by OHDSI and we want to keep consistent. And there's also a user free text kind of tags, which is slightly different, but which can also be used for tagging. So why do we use taxonomy again? The most important thing, why do we want to use it? So that we can discover
Systematically.
Systematically discover things, make it easier for people to find things, whether it's you by navigation or by search, because those taxonomy elements that you use for tagging / metadata becomes indexed and searchable, right? And if you use a consistent taxonomy, then you can create this navigation, very nice navigation, and find it. I'm just saying, from a practical perspective, always keep in mind why do we tag, right? So that later we can discover easier.
No, I really like it. And there's a managed taxonomy. I'm not familiar with a managed taxonomy. I don't right now.
Actually, just as an example, in Athena, when you go, you see this navigation on the left side where it says domains, right? Exactly. So open search on anything, aspirin, right? Right. So on the left side, those are the managed taxonomies that Mr. Reich and his team created way back. They said, when we're describing things, we need to describe a class, we need to describe a vocabulary, we need to describe a domain, and they manage this metadata so that now you can use it for navigation but you can also search on it, right? So it's the same concept.
So when you say managed taxonomy, it's not, it could be managed as in the taxonomy defined by the librarian itself. It doesn't have to be something that is sourced from an external authoritative source. Is that
No,
correct?
no, exactly. It's defined by RSC, by the users, meaning by the governance. So say RSC will say that every phenotypic definition needs to be described and tagged with the following elements. Again, I'm just making this up: therapeutic area, or
Yeah.
author, or whoever created it, right?
Yeah. So there is a standard set of acceptable tags,
Right.
and that is listed on like an Odyssey website,
Mhm.
and that tags has an associated meaning,
Right.
and only those tags are used.
Yeah, so for example, the simplest, I keep using it because I'm just familiar with that, but therapeutic area will give you a broad target of where you think you can use it, right? So if you got like, and pharmas can never agree on therapeutic areas, but if you would, right, but then 20 therapeutic areas, you say neuroscience, whoop, and you can see
Yeah.
it, or, oncology, boom, and you can see it, or, but again, just as a concept, as an idea. So
Can that be something that the vocabulary group manage as part of OMOP vocabulary? Can it just be a concept ID?
No, I think it's
Or is that too
in this
overkill?
specific case, who is the user of your phenotypic definition? Right? That's the target group who needs to agree on how you want to classification, essentially, how you want to classify your phenotypic definition, so it's easier to find, because eventually you're going to end up with thousands of them, right?
Yeah, I think I understand. Yeah, so right now there are a few tags, and I'll show you what those tags are. So if you go to the GitHub repository and go to, I think, this file. Okay, download it.
Yeah, so it's actually great stuff.
So here, this is supposed to download, I thought. Doesn't download? No, I don't know. All right. So here's something called hashtag, and that has managed vocabulary here, like symptoms. So that means that this is a symptom. I'm showing you CSVs because my Excel wouldn't open, but you can see that symptoms. So I have control vocabulary in place right now that is just using terms like symptoms or like here there's another one, withdrawn.
Exactly. So you just need to say what like, if you group them, what's the name for the group, right?
Yeah, signs, here signs.
Like a type or medical type or something like that as a group, and then you list out those standard tags that then you can apply, and that becomes your vocabulary, right?
Yeah, and I think in dash.odyssey.org there is, see here it is. This is it. Accepted, level 2, symptoms, pain, 2022. So these tags are what I'm talking about. This, if you click on that, you'll get probably in a future version. If you click on pain, you can probably get all the definitions that have the tags pain, or you can filter by pain, or phenotype February,
Right.
So these could be the controlled vocabulary that is managed by the work group.
Exactly. And sometimes you might want to get it from the vocabulary team and say, can I use any of the existing vocabularies or concepts that we already have, so it's connected, right?
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So maybe explain how this is developed. So some governance process.
Right. Because what you don't want is somebody you call it symptom, somebody called symptom.
That's right.
And that calls it a sign, right? Something, I don't know, making this up.
Yeah.
And that's meaning the same thing.
Exactly. You don't want two overlapping terminologies. Okay, so that's about the metadata. And then there is the collaborative curation. So there is a submission process, and anybody can submit. And there is a minimum requirement essential elements for submission. And if you have any of these essential elements, then it is considered, it goes into the library. So you need a core definition. preferably an CERC compatible core JSON, but as long as it executes and creates a cohort, we are good. It's a core definition. We need a name for it. We need to know who is submitting, preferably with their ORIC ID, but at least their name. Some description, a succinct description saying what is this? If you're saying that you're giving a core definition, tell us what it is, so that it's not just a name, but like this is an aortic aneurysm phenotype that represents the pharotic aneurysm, 2 lines, submit that. And some form of an assertion statement saying, I have built it and I've tested it on at least one data source that I have access to. And I've got a cohort, So you just don't want people to just build something and not execute it on a data source. We want them to say, and that's just an assertion statement. And this could be like a website tool that they can upload stuff or whatever. But if you do that, it gets a place in the library. And the submission is complete. Now there are additional things that we recommend. So give a longer name. Give us code diagnostics output, give us PheValuator output, give us that, give it this, and that's like a wish list of stuff that we can ask for that the library can keep track of. That's the optional ideas. And then there is the idea of once you have met this criteria, you have an entry in the library.
On criterion. I don't know why it's so hard.
English teacher.
I don't know why this is so hard, so bad. I don't know. I don't get it.
Where is it?
What is criterion?
Okay. So the next is the idea of the peer review, and the peer review is an optional one, right? And if you complete peer review, you get a better tag saying you're peer reviewed. And the peer review could be in any platforms. It could be asynchronous. That is basically the OHDSI forums. You go and fight it out in the OHDSI forums, or it could be synchronous. The synchronous could be like what we're doing. We just talk through it and we record. And then that recording is what basically is referenced. And if anybody wants to go look at it, look at the recording. And we've done both for the phenotype library, and both of them has been good, but it's optional. And if you do it, you get a better tag because somebody else has looked at it. Does that make sense? It's free form peer review. There's really no template as of right now. So that's about peer review. I thought I'll be right about peer review. And then there is the life cycle component. So the life cycle is what is accepted from a peer review versus not. There is some language about what is deprecation and what is an error here. Then finally, I have not finally, there's the technical infrastructure. So right now, this is an R package. It's a Hades R package. So because it's in GitHub, you have GitHub APIs, and that's how Paul Nagy is building that tool, -odyssey.org Phenotype Explorer. There's also R functions that allow you to call it. And because it is in an executable form, it can be used in Hades packages. So you can use it directly in a cohort method or PLP or whatever. You can just say cohort ID 33 and they hope a full study can run. And that's the technical infrastructure language. So it's RN compatible and version controlled, so you have those type of advantages. Some language about quality checks. Basically, there will be a testing framework. There is a testing framework, and it keeps testing. And then you also have an output on data.odyssey.org Phenotype Library. So basically, that's this thing that's usually in sync with the released version of the library. So anybody can volunteer, contribute to this. Right now, it's only J&J, but you can have look at it and say, oh, this cohort has so much cohort counts and so on in whatever data source. So that makes sure that a cohort is executable because you're executing it on a set of volunteer data sources. Some points that I thought, the library does not make any assertions. Like the librarian does not make the assertion that this is good or this is bad or nothing like, or this is gold standard or this is silver standard. You take every core definition. There's also nothing like deduplication. If you want to submit 55 core definitions for diabetes, that's fine. The metadata is what's going to be used to weed out the not useful from the useful. And that's it. That's the paper I was thinking.
Just thinking, I mean, it also represents some changes in terms of the conceptualization of the phenotype library, which I think I think I think they're reasonable. Like, for instance, the peer review being more of an optional point. I don't know. Maybe like what were your kind of internal discussions or I mean, I think like objectively we've struggled to kind of increase the size of this library and scale it up. And I think peer review has been a challenge. And so objectively, that's probably one of the reasons why we've moved in, why we would move in that direction to kind of liberalize it a little bit.
So if you look at this, Evan, you're right. All of these cohorts that have a P prefix have not finished peer review. This one here, inpatient hospitalization, all-cause mortality, and a few others that do not have any prefix have completed peer review and are accepted. Now, what this is showing you is even though something has not completed peer review, it is in the library.
Yep.
Right? So we've already been, for the last 1.5 years since this framework has been put in, we've been accepting core definition into the library, just telling that this is not peer reviewed. Right?
Yeah.
And that's why we were trying to force peer review. We failed.
Yeah.
Because it's too much work, and we don't have a framework for the peer review. So people are like, how do we do it in a reproducible way?
Totally.
So basically, it didn't change the actual implementation. It's still the same library, same content. We just changed it from we need to do peer review to it would be nice to have peer review.
Yep.
I'm going to run the Gowtham.
Yeah, we're over time.
Time's up.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Very nice.
Great discussion. Great to have you, Greg. That was really, really valuable to have your input.
Mutual. Yeah, thank you.
And Greg, if you want to stay back and talk about DOI, I can stop the recording.
Actually, I have to run. Gowtham, I would love to talk to you about that. Maybe next week we'll sync up, but I'll be coming to these meetings more often. Yeah. Actually, very, very, very good stuff. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Gowtham. That was great.
Thanks.
Great job.
Stop the recording now.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.